Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The laughter was already echoing before I even stepped out of the bathroom. I hadn't been gone 5 minutes, but apparently that's all it took for my wife to forget I existed. Honestly, she giggled, loud and unfiltered. If there was a store to trade husbands, I'd already have the receipt taped to his forehead. Laughter. Roaring, full-bellied, table-slapping laughter. I paused in the hallway, towel still damp in my hands, just out of sight. I could hear her wine-glazed confidence floating through the air, sharper with every word. He's sweet, sure, she went on. But sweet doesn't exactly pay for dream vacations or turn heads at work parties. More laughter. Someone muttered something like, "You deserve better," and I swear, I heard her agree. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Just stood there, staring at the hallway wall like it had answers. My ears burned. My throat tightened. And all I could think was, this is how she talks about me when she thinks I'm not listening. I walked in slowly, silent. No one noticed. Not at first. The music played, glasses clinked, and she kept holding court like she was queen of the ungrateful. That's when someone made a joke. "Okay, so what would you trade him for?" Felicity didn't hesitate. "Oh, something with more horsepower. Less whining. Maybe a man who doesn't fold under pressure or cry at Pixar movies." And they lost it. Like she was the funniest woman alive. I waited. I waited for her to glance my way and realize I was right there. That her husband, her actual husband, was hearing every word. But she didn't. She just sipped her drink and leaned into the guy next to her, the one with the blazer and the watch that cost more than my car. And then, only then, I spoke. "One day," I said calmly, "you're going to wish you hadn't traded loyalty for luxury. I hope your upgrade comes with a manual, because maintaining respect takes work, and clearly, you're out of practice." The room froze. She turned toward me, stunned, like I'd appeared out of thin air. No one laughed, not even the guy in the blazer. His face went pale, and suddenly that expensive watch wasn't ticking so loud anymore. I walked past them all, picked up my coat, and left. No yelling, no scene. But that was the night the foundation cracked, and she knew it. I didn't go far after I walked out. Just sat in the car, keys untouched in the ignition, hands on the steering wheel, staring out through the windshield like I was waiting for instructions from the sky. I could still hear faint music bleeding through the walls of that overpriced house, the sound of people trying to recover the mood I had apparently ruined. But what none of them knew was, I didn't ruin anything. I just tore off the wrapping paper and showed them what was underneath. Felicity didn't follow me. Not right away. I kept glancing at the door, expecting her to come running out. Angry, maybe embarrassed, maybe apologetic. But the door stayed shut. 10 minutes passed. 15. A part of me hoped she was inside defending me, telling everyone it was just a joke gone too far, that she loved me and it wasn't what it looked like. But I knew better. She was probably pouring another glass, calling me dramatic, laughing it off. That was her specialty, making me feel like I was always the one overreacting, even when the pain was obvious. Finally, around the 20-minute mark, the passenger door opened, and there she was. Still dressed like a red carpet nominee, but her eyes, those usually sharp, controlled eyes, looked different. She slid into the seat without a word, didn't even glance at me. She didn't say sorry, didn't ask if I was okay. She just sighed like she was exhausted from my behavior and said, "Can we go?" I didn't answer. I just started the car. The ride home was painfully silent. Not the kind where both people are stewing, waiting for someone to break first. No, this was the kind of silence where you start to realize just how far apart two people have drifted, and that maybe neither of them knows the way back. She broke the silence first. "You embarrassed me." That was it. That was the first thing she said after everything. I clenched the steering wheel. My voice cracked when I spoke, but I didn't care. "You humiliated me in front of a room full of strangers. But sure, let's talk about your embarrassment." She rolled her eyes. It was a joke. I turned toward her briefly at a red light. "You've made the same joke 10 different ways over the last 6 months. They stopped being funny a long time ago." She didn't respond. Just looked out the window like the trees held more value than I did. When we got home, she headed straight to the bedroom while I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the fridge like it might offer me advice. I thought maybe she'd come back out. Maybe we'd have it out, scream, cry, talk, anything. But the only sound that came was the soft click of the bedroom door locking behind her. So, I slept on the couch. Again, I laid there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, asking myself a question I used to be terrified to think. Would she even notice if I left? And the worst part wasn't not knowing. The worst part was thinking she might not care either way. The next morning, I didn't make coffee, didn't iron her blouse, didn't ask if she wanted toast or her usual smoothie with extra honey. I just sat at the table, motionless, staring at my phone screen without reading anything. I wasn't scrolling. I wasn't even pretending. I was just holding it like a shield, trying to stay quiet enough to keep from unraveling. I heard her heels clack across the hardwood, her perfume trailing behind her like everything was normal. And for a second, I actually thought she'd speak to me, maybe even look guilty. But all she said was, "Move your car, I'm late." That was it. No good morning, no apology. Just another order barked from a woman who used to hold my hand under the covers and whisper dumb jokes that only we understood. I moved the car, like always. But something felt different this time, like I was no longer moving it for her. I was moving it for me, just to get away from the version of myself that tolerated being invisible. When I came back inside, the house was empty. Her toothbrush was gone from the holder, her favorite coffee mug left clean and dry in the rack. She had already reset the stage, like none of last night had happened. I stood in the living room for a long time, watching the morning light crawl across the floor, and it hit me. I was disappearing by inches. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, like wallpaper peeling off the walls behind furniture no one bothers to move. I opened her laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to know. I told myself I needed answers, but the truth was, I wanted confirmation. Proof that the woman who joked about trading me in wasn't joking at all. And I got it. Not right away, but enough. A hidden folder named Work Trip Photos. I clicked it, expecting landscapes and restaurant selfies. Instead, I found 3 photos. One of her on a balcony I'd never seen. One of her clinking wine glasses with someone whose face was just out of frame. And one, cropped too carefully, of her legs tangled with someone else's in bed. I sat there, heart in my throat, not even angry at first. Just numb, like my body couldn't decide which emotion to access first. And then I noticed something worse than the photos. The timestamps. The dates. 2 weeks before our anniversary. The same weekend I was home with the flu, thinking she was in Denver for a client pitch. That's when I realized the joke at the party wasn't just a jab. It was a confession hiding in plain sight. A way for her to test the water, see how far she could push before I snapped. But I hadn't snapped. I had stayed. I had always stayed. Through cold shoulders, late nights, phone calls she took in the bathroom, and those constant "he's just a friend" explanations. I closed the laptop, walked to the hallway mirror, and stared at myself. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw clenched, and for once, I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a man on the verge of waking up. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because the moment you catch a liar is not the moment you confront them. It's the moment you start watching everything closer. And I was about to see how deep the betrayal really went. By noon that same day, I had already made 3 decisions. First, I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. Second, I was going to start documenting everything. And third, I was done playing the fool in a show I never auditioned for. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. Not my brother. Not my coworker who always said, "Man, your wife's out of your league." I kept it all inside because I knew the moment I spoke it aloud, I couldn't take it back. And I needed time to figure out what kind of ending I wanted this story to have. Felicity came home around 6 that evening, breezing through the front door like she hadn't shattered something in me the night before. She hummed while putting her heels away, scrolled through her phone while ignoring my existence, then asked if I had any plans for the weekend. "We're invited to Trent and Valerie's cabin," she said casually, like we hadn't been talking through closed doors for weeks. "It'll be good for us." I nodded, not because I wanted to go, but because I wanted her to think I was still the same doormat husband she thought I was. And besides, I had a feeling if I played along just long enough, she'd slip. People always do when they think you're not paying attention. That night, after she fell asleep, I went back to her laptop. I wasn't expecting to find much more. She was careful, too careful, but I noticed something odd. An encrypted folder named Archive 2022. I recognized the file name structure. It looked like it had been synced from her old phone. I didn't have the password, but I did have one advantage. She used the same 4-digit PIN for everything. Her locker, our garage code, even her gym keychain. I tried it. It opened. Inside were backups, photos, notes, voice memos. Some were innocent. Old shopping lists, screenshots of memes, makeup tutorials. But mixed in were audio clips labeled only by date. One of them was from the weekend. She told me she had a girls' spa getaway in Sonoma. I played it. Her voice. Laughing. "You're so bad," she whispered. And then a man's voice. "Say it again. That you'd trade him in a second." A pause. Then her voice again, clearer this time. "I'd trade him, burn the receipt, and pretend he never existed." I stopped the recording halfway through. My hands were shaking too badly to keep listening. I saved the file to a flash drive and shoved it deep into the lining of my old laptop bag. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat in the dark wondering how I'd let things go this far. She had told people, to their faces, that she'd trade me. She told him. And now I knew it wasn't just a cruel joke. It was a rehearsed line. The next morning, I made her breakfast. Pancakes with that weird almond syrup she likes. She looked at me suspiciously when I placed the plate down, like kindness was foreign to her now. "What's this?" she asked. "Just figured we could use a good start," I said, smiling through my teeth. "The weekend's coming." She nodded slowly, chewing with careful bites. She didn't know that by the time we got to that cabin, I'd have a plan. She didn't know I was documenting everything. She didn't know I had already talked to a lawyer, anonymously. And she definitely didn't know I had a recording of her voice saying she wished I'd never existed. But she was about to find out. By the time Friday rolled around, everything was in motion. I had already forwarded the audio file to a private cloud folder under a random name, just in case something went wrong. I bought a cheap burner phone and preloaded it with screenshots, calendar entries, message backups, and one video clip I hadn't watched in full because just the thumbnail was enough to make my stomach turn. She was smiling in it. That was the part that haunted me. Her smile wasn't the forced kind she gave me when she was pretending to listen. It was real, effortless, wide. The kind of smile she used to give me years ago, when we were still us. Felicity packed like she was going on a honeymoon. Skirts, heels, matching sleepwear, perfume I hadn't smelled in months. She kept checking herself in the mirror, fluffing her hair, smiling at her own reflection. "You should wear that blue shirt I like," she said without looking at me. "It's the only one that makes you look kind of put together." I said nothing, just zipped my bag quietly. I didn't bring the blue shirt. We drove in silence. The highway stretched for hours with nothing but trees and billboards for things nobody ever really needed. She tapped through her phone the entire way, turning the screen away from me every time I looked over. I didn't ask. I just drove. When we got to the cabin, I immediately knew something was off. There were too many wine bottles already on the counter. Too many glasses set out. And only one bedroom was made up with fresh linens. I kept my expression blank, but my mind was already moving in a dozen directions. She wasn't planning for us to stay the night alone. Someone else was coming. Or worse, already had. She pretended to settle in, humming, lighting candles, setting the mood like she was starring in some twisted romance movie. "Why don't you start the fire?" she asked sweetly. "I'll pour us a drink." I stepped outside instead. Said I needed air. What I really needed was to call the burner phone I'd hidden under the passenger seat in the car. It rang twice. Then the voice on the other end said, "We're set. He'll be there at 8. Right on schedule." I went back inside, sat down on the couch, and watched her pretend to care. We talked about nothing. Weather, traffic, stupid shows we'd never finish. She kept checking her watch. Every now and then, she'd glance toward the window. At exactly 8:04 p.m., a car pulled into the gravel driveway. Felicity jumped up like it was a surprise, like she hadn't just been waiting for this exact moment. "Oh, that must be Trent. He said he might swing by." She looked nervous, over-explaining like she was trying to convince herself it was all casual. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just said, "Funny. I thought this was supposed to be a weekend for us." Before she could answer, the door opened, and there he was. Not Trent. Not anyone I'd ever met. Just a tall man with smug confidence, holding a bottle of wine and acting like he belonged. She froze. He froze. I stood. "Oh," I said, walking over. "You must be the upgraded model. I've heard so much." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I turned to Felicity. "Go on. Tell him what you told me this morning. About how this was a reset weekend. How we were going to reconnect. I'm sure he'd love to hear how sincere you were." She went pale. Her hands started to shake. I didn't think. No, you didn't, I cut in. But I did. I thought a lot. About timing. About trust. About how long I'd have to pretend not to know. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket, hit play, and let her voice echo through the cabin. I'd trade him, burn the receipt, and pretend he never existed. The man backed toward the door like it was on fire. Felicity looked like she might faint, but I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just smiled. Because now, the real game had started. She didn't chase after him. Not right away. The door clicked softly behind the man, whoever he was, and all the air seemed to get sucked out of the room. Felicity stood there frozen, one hand still holding the wine glass like it was some kind of shield, her mouth slightly open, eyes darting between me and the burner phone in my hand. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her until she finally muttered, "You went through my stuff?" That was her first concern. Not the lie, not the betrayal. Not even the fact that she'd invited her affair partner to a weekend she pretended was for reconciliation. No, her first instinct was to act like I was the one who crossed the line. I let out a short laugh. It sounded hollow. That's what you're upset about. She placed the glass down carefully, as if moving too fast might shatter it. Or maybe she knew she was the one about to shatter. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she said, walking slowly toward me like she was approaching a stray animal she was afraid might bite. It was just. I felt disconnected. We've been distant for months. I didn't know how to fix it. You thought sleeping with someone else was a reset button? I asked, not shouting, just tired. My voice didn't carry rage anymore. Only the weight of disappointment I didn't even realize I'd been dragging behind me. It was a mistake, she whispered. No, I said. A mistake is something you trip into once. This was a choice. Repeated. Planned. And you were proud of it. She didn't deny it. Her silence was the loudest thing in the room. I want to fix this, she said, finally breaking the quiet. I do. She reached for me. I stepped back. No, Felicity. You don't want to fix us. You want to fix your image. You want the version of me who used to clean up your messes, who made excuses for you when you drank too much, who laughed along with your friends even when they made me the punchline. Tears welled up in her eyes. But they didn't move me. Not this time. I had seen those tears before. At her mother's funeral. At our wedding. At that dinner where she told me she didn't feel inspired by me anymore. They weren't new. They were rehearsed. I didn't know you'd find out, she said quietly. That made me pause. You mean, if I hadn't found the photos, the recordings, the folder you hid in plain sight, this would have kept going? She nodded. Just once. Small. Guilty. Like she was shrinking into herself. That was the most honest moment we'd had in months. I looked around the cabin. The wine. The candles. The fake romance set up like we were still pretending. And I realized. I didn't feel like exploding. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want answers anymore. I just wanted peace. So I said the one thing I knew would scare her more than any screaming match ever could. I'm done. She blinked. What does that mean? It means I'm not fighting. Not begging. Not staying. You already traded me in. You just didn't think I'd return the favor. Her voice cracked. So that's it. You're just walking away? No, I said calmly. I already walked away weeks ago. Tonight, you're just catching up. I picked up my bag. Didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Like I wasn't holding up the weight of someone else's happiness anymore. I didn't drive home. I didn't even know where I was going at first. I just drove. For miles. Through winding forest roads, past sleepy gas stations, and midnight diners lit up by buzzing signs. The kind of places where no one knows your name and no one asks questions. Somewhere around 1 a.m., I pulled into an old motel with a flickering vacancy sign and paid in cash. The woman behind the desk didn't even look up. I was just another tired man with too many thoughts and not enough bags. That was fine. I didn't want to be seen. Not yet. The room was cold. Smelled like bleach and old carpet. But it was quiet, and quiet was all I needed. I laid there on that lumpy mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, thinking about all the things I should have seen earlier. The work trips that never included receipts. The friend she swore was gay. The new underwear I never saw her wear at home. How had I convinced myself it was just a rough patch? How did I let her train me into silence with guilt and sarcasm? I opened my bag and pulled out the flash drive, plugged it into my laptop, watched everything again, this time without emotion, without denial, just as a man looking at facts. I took notes. Times. dates, faces. I wanted the full picture before I disappeared completely from her story. Because that's what she didn't realize. When you erase someone from your life, they might decide to write their own ending. The next morning, I drove straight to a lawyer I had quietly researched a week ago. I'd already booked the consultation anonymously. No receptionist. Just a man in a gray suit and tired eyes who'd seen this exact situation 1,000 times. I showed him the folder. I laid out the timeline. I explained how every asset, every credit card, every account had been built in my name, while she played the carefree wife who contributed nothing but criticism and cocktail parties. He looked at me and said, "Do you want revenge?" I shook my head. I want out, but I want out smart. And so we began the process. Financial audits. Property separation. A game plan so methodical, it made me feel like I was reclaiming oxygen in a room that had been choking me for years. I wasn't going to scream or beg or explode. I was going to leave with everything I earned, and none of the baggage she thought she could dump on me. I didn't contact her, didn't text, didn't answer her calls. Let her sit in that cabin alone and wonder. Let her spiral trying to guess what I would do. That silence was the only thing I had ever given her that she didn't know how to handle. But I wasn't gone, not yet. Because there was one final thing I needed to do before I vanished from her life for good. One message. One carefully written note that would land harder than any confrontation ever could. So I waited. 2 more days. Until I knew she was back in the city. And then I sent her a small envelope. No return address. Just her name in my handwriting. Inside was a single photo, the one I had saved from the video. Her face, her body, her betrayal, frozen in time. And on the back of the photo, I wrote 7 words. Your trade-in just voided its warranty. No threats. No cursing. No explanation. Just closure. Or at least, my version of it. The envelope did its job. She called. 12 times in one day. Left voicemails that ranged from defensive to desperate. The first few were full of anger. You're overreacting. It didn't mean anything. We can fix this. Then they shifted. I miss you. Please talk to me. I made a mistake. By the time the 7th message came in, she was crying, saying she didn't recognize herself anymore, that she'd lost sight of what mattered. But I didn't listen to the rest. I didn't need to. Because the thing is, when someone shows you how little they value your loyalty, your forgiveness isn't a gift. It's an invitation for more pain. And I was finally done bleeding for someone who never even brought a bandage. The divorce papers were delivered a week later. Quietly. Neatly. No drama. I kept the condo, the accounts, the car, because I'd built them. She didn't contest. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to fight for. Or maybe, deep down, she realized I'd finally become someone she couldn't manipulate with a smile or a memory. And you know what shocked me the most? The silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt like peace. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up bracing for a cold shoulder or a cruel joke. I didn't flinch when my phone buzzed. I didn't shrink under the weight of her disappointment. I started reading again. Books I used to love before my world shrank to fit inside her expectations. I reconnected with my sister, who I hadn't seen in months because Felicity couldn't stand her voice. I even picked up hiking, a hobby I'd always talked about but never pursued because we're not outdoorsy people, she once laughed. Turns out, I am. One Sunday morning, months later, I ran into someone at a trailhead. Her name was Clara. She offered me water when I forgot mine, and we ended up walking the entire loop together, talking about everything and nothing. She wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, but she listened, really listened. And when she laughed at my dumb movie quotes, I didn't feel like a punchline. I felt seen. We've gone on 5 hikes since. No pressure, just steps forward. And for now, that's more than enough. So yeah, I was the guy who got joked about at a party like he was disposable. But I walked away, not bitter, not broken, but better, stronger, quieter maybe, but full of peace. And the next time someone jokes about trading in their husband, maybe they'll remember, not every man walks away crying. Some of us walk away free. Thank you for following this story on Reddit Confessions. Which part shocked you the most? Was it the cabin confrontation, the recording, or the final message? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it moved you. We'll see you next time on Reddit Confessions.